What if I told you that everything you're building right now, your job, your relationship, your sense of who you are, could disappear tomorrow, and there's absolutely nothing you could do to stop it? What if the life you've carefully crafted could be shattered by a single phone call, one wrong turn, or an accident that comes out of nowhere? You might think, not me, I'm careful, I'm in control. But control is an illusion, and when that illusion breaks, it doesn't do so quietly. It erupts. One moment you're grounded, the next you're gasping for air in a storm you never saw coming. Elena never imagined that a short bike ride across Ponte Vecchio would be the last time she'd see the world clearly. A taxi veered too fast around a corner. The next thing she knew, everything went black. The doctors told her it was temporary, but temporary turned into weeks, then months, and suddenly a life filled with canvases, colors, and light was replaced with silence, shadow, and helplessness. Imagine being an artist and losing your vision. Not just your sight, but your identity. At first, she spiraled. Panic, rage, grief. But then, something happened. In the dark, Elena began to hear, not just noise, but the sound of life. Footsteps on cobblestone, wind brushing through leaves. The slow breath of her dog sleeping beside her bed. The world hadn't vanished, it had simply changed forms. And she, through all the chaos, began to change with it. This isn't a story about going blind. It's a story about waking up. Because Elena discovered what most of us never realize until it's too late. Peace doesn't come from having control. It comes from releasing the need for it. Chaos is not a mistake. It's not a glitch in the system. Chaos is the system. And here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, you will not always be okay. You will lose people. You will lose things. You will lose parts of yourself. Life is not fair. It's not predictable, but it is yours to respond to. And that's where the magic begins. There's a quote by Marcus Aurelius that has saved more minds than therapy ever could. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Stoicism doesn't offer escape. It offers armor. Not to protect you from the storm, but to remind you that you are the storm's equal. Elena's vision returned, eventually. But by then, she had changed. Her paintings were no longer about what she saw. They were about what she felt, about what she heard, about the internal world most of us are too distracted to enter. Her art now sells across Europe. But more than that, she lives without fear. Because once you've faced darkness and found light inside it, nothing outside can ever scare you the same way again. This is your invitation. Not to be fearless, but to be unshakable. Chaos will find you. But what it finds, that's up to you. And if this story stirred something in you, if it made you pause, even for a moment, then I want to ask you for something small. Subscribe to this channel, not just because it helps us grow, but because every click tells the algorithm, these are the kind of stories the world needs more of. Your support fuels the next video, the next lesson, the next voice that might just reach someone when they need it most. Now, before we move on, I have a quick question for you. A small challenge. If you suddenly lost the thing that defines your identity, your job, your voice, your ability, what would you do first? A. Fall apart and ask, why me? B. Pause, breathe, and ask, what now? Drop your answer in the comments below, A or B. Let's see how many warriors are quietly training their minds among us. What if the most powerful thing you ever did in your life was nothing? Not walking away, not backing down, just pausing. It sounds counterintuitive, especially in a world that glorifies speed. React fast, respond now, push back harder. But what if the key to taking back control wasn't about going faster or shouting louder, but in mastering the space between stimulus and response? This is what Jordan, a 29-year-old startup founder from Chicago, learned the hard way. It was the biggest investor pitch of his career. Weeks of preparation, a room full of decision makers, a shot that could change everything. And then, right, In the middle of presenting his plan, a senior investor interrupted him, sharply questioning his credibility. The tone wasn't curious, it was condescending. The words weren't neutral, they were personal. For a split second, Jordan felt his face flush, his chest tightened. Every cell in his body screamed, "Defend yourself, snap back, prove them wrong." But then he remembered something he had read a few nights before, unable to sleep. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. He didn't even know who wrote it, but in that moment, it saved him. Jordan didn't react. He paused. He took a breath, a real one, slow, grounded. He looked at the investor, nodded, and replied, "I'm happy to walk you through how we reached these numbers, and I appreciate your honesty." Just like that, the tension broke. The mood shifted. Jordan wasn't a boy defending himself. He was a man owning the room. That moment didn't just salvage the meeting, it changed Jordan. Because for the first time, he felt what real power was. Not domination, not retaliation, but control over himself. You don't have to be in a boardroom to feel this. You might feel it when your partner snaps at you for no reason, when your coworker undermines you in front of others, when your child screams and tests your limits, or when a stranger online pushes just the right button to trigger everything you're holding in. We think we're at the mercy of these moments, but we're not. We're at the mercy of our own training, or lack thereof. Stoicism teaches that the mind is a battlefield, and every time we pause instead of react, we win a small but mighty war. A war against ego, against habit, against our emotional autopilot. It's not easy. No one said it would be, but it is simple. Pause, breathe, observe, choose. It starts there, with seconds that stretch out like an eternity, with discomfort that feels like restraint. But something beautiful happens in that discomfort. You begin to hear your real voice, not the panicked reaction, not the conditioned reflex, but the wiser part of you. The one that sees the bigger picture, the one that asks, what outcome do I actually want? People think Stoicism is about being emotionless, but it's not. It's about not being enslaved by emotions. It's about holding the reins instead of being dragged by the horse. Jordan didn't suppress his anger. He acknowledged it, honored it, but didn't act on it. That's what made him powerful. That's what made the room listen. The next time you feel triggered, try this. Visualize yourself as a storm watcher, not a storm victim. The clouds roll in, thunder cracks, but you're just observing. You're above it. You feel everything, but you don't become it. This ability doesn't come naturally. It comes from repetition, from choosing pause over panic, reflection over reaction, again and again, until that space between impulse and decision becomes your superpower. The truth is, most people live like matches, striking hot and fast, burning out just as quickly. But you can be like flint, grounded, unmoving. Spark only when necessary, and even then with intention. That moment of pause might feel small, but it holds the weight of who you are becoming. Because every time you choose awareness over reaction, you're not just changing the moment, you're changing your life, one breath at a time. Anger is a fire that can either burn you down or forge you into something stronger. It's fierce, seductive, and blinding. Most people never stop long enough to ask where it's coming from. They just react, slam doors, raise voices, send texts they'll regret before the message even delivers. But Tyrone, a rideshare driver from New York City, learned the hard way that rage, when left unchecked, doesn't just destroy relationships, it can destroy lives. Tyrone used to live on edge. The pressure of surviving in a city that never slows down, combined with the constant disrespect he felt from passengers, pedestrians, and other drivers, left him raw and reactive. Every honk felt like an attack, every side eye from a customer, a declaration of war. And one morning, After being cut off for the third time in less than 20 minutes, something snapped. He laid on the horn, rolled down the window, and shouted, words that surprised even him. The other driver retaliated, and in a matter of seconds, a simple traffic annoyance nearly turned into a physical confrontation in the middle of the Bronx. He didn't get into a fight that day, but something inside him shattered. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was the realization that he had become a puppet, controlled not by strings, but by emotion. Tyrone wasn't living, he was reacting, and that terrified him. That night, after dropping off his last passenger, he sat alone in his parked car and asked himself a question he had never asked before. What is this anger trying to tell me? It was a question that marked the beginning of his transformation. Anger is not random. It's not even the enemy. It's a signal, a flare from the unconscious that says, something hurts, something feels unfair, something needs your attention. But if you treat it like a weapon instead of a message, you'll end up wounding the wrong people, including yourself. Tyrone began to keep what he called his fire log. At the end of each day, he would write down 3 moments that triggered his anger. What happened, how he responded, what he felt beneath the rage. At first it felt awkward, but then patterns began to emerge. His fury wasn't just about traffic. It was about respect, about dignity, about years of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. The anger was just a mask. Underneath it was pain, and beneath that, a longing for peace. This awareness changed everything. Because once Tyrone understood the language of his emotions, he could choose his response, not suppress, not pretend, but choose. One afternoon, months later, a teenager slammed his car door and called him slow. The old Tyrone would have snapped. But the new Tyrone breathed. He smiled even. Not because he wasn't angry, but because he understood. That boy was dealing with something too. And Tyrone wasn't about to carry someone else's fire when he had finally learned to manage his own. This is the gift of Stoicism. It doesn't demand that you be cold or emotionless. It invites you to become fluent in your feelings so they don't control you. It teaches you to ask, where is this coming from? What belief is fueling this emotion? And what would the wise version of me do next? Transforming anger into awareness is not about denying your humanity. It's about claiming your power. And that power doesn't roar. It observes. It reflects. It acts with precision, not impulse. You can practice this too. The next time you feel a flush of rage, pause. Ask yourself, is this reaction going to move me closer to who I want to be? Or is it just another reflex I've mistaken for strength? Use that fire. Don't be used by it. Tyrone still drives in New York, still faces the same chaos. But now his car is more than a vehicle. It's a moving temple, a space where emotions are acknowledged, not unleashed, where the wheel is in his hands, not just literally, but mentally. You can have that too. Because fire doesn't only destroy. In the hands of someone conscious, someone committed, it can illuminate, it can purify, and it can transform even the most reactive mind into one that leads with clarity, not combustion. Maya had heard it all before. The slams, the curses, the impossible to please customers. Working as a waitress in a packed San Francisco diner wasn't exactly a setting known for serenity. It was chaos, wrapped in clattering dishes and boiling tempers. But that day, something happened that tested her like never before. It started like any other shift. Coffee orders, late breakfasts, small talk. But mid-morning, a man at table 6 decided Maya was the reason his day was going wrong. Maybe it was the eggs. Maybe it was something deeper in his life unraveling. But whatever it was, he lashed out, loudly, cruelly. Cruel in that calculated way some people are when they think no one will stop them. He insulted not just the service, but her intelligence, her appearance, her very worth. The entire diner went quiet, all eyes on Maya, waiting to see what she would do. She could have shouted. No one would have blamed her. She could have defended herself, hurled words back, even demanded the man leave, but she didn't. She looked at him for a long second, just long enough to make it clear she wasn't afraid, and then said, with calm so steady it chilled the air, "I'm sorry you're having a hard day. I'll fix the order." And that was it. She turned, walked away, and never once let her face crack. Afterward, a co-worker leaned in and whispered, "How did you not lose it?" Maya just smiled, wiped down the counter and said, "Because if I lose control, he wins, and I don't hand my power to strangers." That was Maya's quiet philosophy. A kind of street stoicism forged not in ancient Rome but in the messy, modern battleground of everyday life. She had learned that calmness wasn't weakness, it was warfare. Silent, precise, and devastating to those who expect chaos. Most people are used to emotional combat. We scream to be heard. We escalate to be seen. We think the loudest person wins. But the truth is, conflict thrives on mutual chaos. It feeds off reaction. And when one person doesn't feed it back, when they meet fire with stillness, it short-circuits everything. There's a strength in self-restraint that few ever realize, because it's invisible. It doesn't show up in volume or violence. It shows up in clarity, in holding the line when everything in you wants to break, in refusing to be a mirror for someone else's rage. And this doesn't mean you stay silent out of fear or avoidance. It means your silence is a statement. You do not get to control my energy. It's not passivity. It's a deliberate strategy. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus taught that no man is free if he is not master of himself. And in that diner, Maya was freer than anyone in the room. Imagine applying this in your own life. Someone attacks your ideas in a meeting, not with logic but with venom. Your ego screams for retaliation. But instead, you respond with a question, or a measured tone, or a smile that says, "You don't rattle me." You don't just protect your dignity, you elevate it. You don't just hold the room, you shift it. It's not easy, and it doesn't mean staying calm feels good in the moment. It can feel like swallowing fire. But that fire, when contained, becomes something else. Strength, respect, and most of all, influence. Because people expect you to break. They expect you to lose it. When you don't, they have to reevaluate the script. That man in the diner, he didn't say another word. He ate his food in silence and left a $20 tip. Why? Because calmness is disarming. It reflects people back to themselves. It forces them to sit with their own noise without your reaction as a distraction. And the more you practice it, the more powerful you become. You start seeing through the chaos, through the bait, through the manipulation. You become someone who can walk into tension and diffuse it with presence alone. Maya doesn't think of herself as a philosopher, but every day she lives the core of Stoic wisdom. She's not perfect. She still feels the sting of insults. But she never lets those moments define her response. And that, in a world addicted to drama, is nothing short of radical, because power isn't always loud. Sometimes, it walks into a room, speaks softly, and leaves with all the control. Lucas stood in the center of an empty basketball court, the echo of his own footsteps haunting him like ghosts from another life. The place smelled the same: sweat, leather, dust. The bleachers were still painted in the same fading colors. The rim above him was slightly bent, like it had always been. But Lucas wasn't the same. 3 years earlier, this court had been his kingdom. A college star in Los Angeles with scouts in the stands and a future that felt inevitable. Everyone told him he was going pro, and he believed them, until one sharp pain in his knee turned into a diagnosis no athlete ever wants to hear. Career-ending injury. At first it was shock, then came the bitterness. He couldn't stop replaying that final game in his mind, as if one different move could rewind time. He obsessed over every mistake, every moment that might have led to that one wrong step. When he wasn't living in the past, he was drowning in the future, imagining what he had lost, what could have been, what never would be. His body was here, but his mind, it was nowhere. This is the trap that so many of us live in, haunted by a past we can't change, and anxious about a future we can't predict. We call it overthinking. But really, it's time travel without purpose. And the cost? We miss the only moment we can ever actually live in. This one. Lucas didn't come back to himself overnight. It started with a quiet, almost accidental encounter with a Stoic idea. Someone had given him a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He read it, not expecting much, but one line stopped him cold. Confine yourself to the present. He reread it, again and again, until something clicked. The present is the only place where choice exists, the only place where power lives. Everything else is memory or fantasy, so Lucas began to train, not his legs, but his attention. Each morning, he would sit on that same court before sunrise and breathe. He wasn't trying to empty his mind, he was trying to anchor it. He called it 5 senses grounding. He'd ask himself, what do I see? What do I hear? What can I feel? What's in the air right now? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, now. It was awkward at first, but gradually the practice became a habit. And the habit became a mindset. He still grieved his lost dream. That part never fully went away. But the grief stopped controlling him, because each time his mind drifted to what might have been, he would return again and again to what is. Lucas began coaching neighborhood kids, at first just to stay connected to the game, but over time, it turned into something more. He wasn't just teaching them how to dribble or shoot, he was teaching them how to stay present, how to respond instead of react, how to breathe through pressure. And they noticed, not just the kids, but their parents, their teachers. Something in him had changed. He wasn't the star anymore. He was the anchor. We live in a time that constantly tries to pull us out of the present. Phones buzzing with updates about everything but now. Memories served to us like candy-coated guilt. Warnings about futures we haven't even arrived in yet. But Stoicism offers a rebellion, a quiet internal revolution against distraction. Because what if peace isn't found by fixing the past or predicting the future, but by fully meeting the moment we're in? You don't need a mountain retreat or silent monastery to practice this. You need your breath, your senses, a willingness to come back to this second again and again, no matter how many times your mind wanders. Lucas still stands on that court sometimes. He still feels a twinge in his knee, a sting in his chest when he sees someone else chasing the dream he lost. But then he breathes, looks around, feels the texture of the ball in his hands, the morning air on his skin, the sound of sneakers hitting pavement, and he smiles, because he's not living in a memory. He's not chasing a ghost. He's here, and here is enough. Isabella grew up in a place where dreams were luxuries, not expectations. The narrow alleys of Rio de Janeiro's favelas echoed with the sounds of survival, sirens in the distance, arguments through thin walls, and children laughing in spite of it all. From the outside, the world had already decided who Isabella would become. Another statistic, another girl swallowed by the streets before she even had the chance to stand. But something in her always whispered a different story, and she remembered the first time someone told her, "People like us don't get out." It was meant as a warning, a protective truth wrapped in resignation. But instead of swallowing it, Isabella questioned it. Who gets to decide what people like us means? Who has the right to write someone else's story? It's easy to internalize the limitations others place on us. When the world treats you like a background character, it's tempting to believe it, to shrink, to accept. But Stoicism teaches something radically different. Your worth is not up for debate. Your circumstances may shape your setting, but your character is yours to define. Epictetus was born into slavery. That's not a metaphor. He literally had no freedom, no wealth, no social standing. And yet his writings are studied across centuries, not because of what he owned, but because of how he thought. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That line found its way to Isabella, tucked in a library book passed through too many hands to trace. And once she read it, she couldn't unsee it. It became her mantra. She repeated it while walking past the gangs, while studying under flickering streetlights while ignoring the voices that told her she was wasting her time. She couldn't change where she started, but she could change what she did with it. She began teaching English to kids in her neighborhood, not for money, but because she believed language was a form of freedom. She'd write quotes from Stoic philosophers on the blackboard she'd painted on her wall. Not many kids understood them at first, but they felt them. The calm, the strength, the defiance of a world that expected nothing from them. One day, a visiting volunteer from a nonprofit saw her in action. Impressed, he offered to connect her to their international outreach program. It was the first step on a path that would take her far beyond the walls of her childhood. Today, Isabella speaks on global stages. She helps design education systems in underserved areas. But she'll be the first to tell you, none of that defines her. Because here's the truth. Who you are is not a summary of your achievements or the failures you were born into. Who you are is defined by how you respond when everything around you tells you to give up. You can't control the cards you're dealt, but you are always the one holding them. You are always the one choosing how to play. Isabella still visits her old neighborhood. She still teaches when she can. But she no longer carries the weight of other people's expectations. She walks her path with clarity because she chose it, not because someone else paved it for her. And maybe that's what Stoicism is, in the end. Not a detachment from the world, but a reclamation of your place in it. Not surrender, but authorship. What? If you sat down today and wrote a letter from your future self, 10 years from now, describing the person you've become? Not your job, not your possessions, but your courage, your focus, your values, your ability to respond with grace when others expect you to break. What would that version of you say? Because you don't have to wait for permission to become them. The world will try to name you. Circumstances will try to limit you. People will tell you what your story is supposed to be. But you are not a supporting character in someone else's narrative. You are the author. And your next chapter starts with a choice. When you look at each of their stories, Elena, Jordan, Tyrone, Maya, Lucas, and Isabella, it might seem like they lived different lives in different corners of the world, facing wildly different challenges. A sudden accident, a public humiliation, a lifetime of anger, daily disrespect, a lost dream, a future written off before it even began. But beneath every twist in their stories lies the same quiet force. The power of the mind trained in calmness. Elena faced the fear of blindness not by resisting what she couldn't control, but by surrendering to the stillness and rediscovering beauty in new forms. Jordan transformed a moment of public criticism into a quiet act of authority, not because he fought louder, but because he didn't fight at all. Tyrone learned to stand in the heat of rage without letting it consume him, turning each flare-up into a chance for self-reflection. Maya disarmed cruelty with dignity, not weakness. Her silence louder than any insult hurled her way. Lucas let go of a future that died before it was born and rebuilt his sense of self, one present moment at a time. And Isabella, who was never meant to break out of the limits placed around her, rewrote her own definition through persistence, presence, and purpose. Each one of them discovered something most people go their whole lives without realizing. Your external world can crumble, shift, betray, or surprise you. But your internal world? That's yours. Always has been. Always will be. What ties all of them together is not luck, not privilege, not even opportunity. It's choice. In every moment of chaos, they chose not to be victims of circumstance, but authors of response. And that is the very heart of Stoicism. Not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Not indifference, but awareness. Not surrender, but self-command. So what can we learn from this? First, we learn that calm is not something you are born with. It is something you build. It is a muscle, a practice. And like any skill, it strengthens with use. That means each frustration, each insult, each setback isn't just a nuisance. It's a training opportunity. Your daily life becomes your dojo. Second, we understand that silence is not passive. It's powerful. In a world addicted to reaction, Your stillness is rebellion. Your pause is a statement. When you choose how to respond rather than react, you reclaim authority over your life, no matter what chaos surrounds you. Third, we realize the importance of anchoring ourselves in the present. Worrying about the future or obsessing over the past doesn't prepare us, it paralyzes us. Right here, right now, is the only moment that contains real freedom. Whether you're in a traffic jam, a boardroom, a hospital bed, or a dark place, in your mind, this moment is the only one that asks for your full attention. Meet it. And finally, we learn that identity is not assigned, it is chosen. No matter where you come from, no matter what people expect of you, no matter what your past says, you always get to define your response. And in doing so, you define yourself. So, as you walk back into your life, into your job, your relationships, your conflicts, your dreams, remember that the world might not get calmer. People won't always be kind. Outcomes won't always go your way. But you can become the calm in any storm. Now let me ask you a quick question. If someone publicly insults or embarrasses you, how would you prefer to handle it? A. Immediately. Defend yourself, even if it escalates the conflict. B. Pause, stay composed, and respond only if it adds value. Drop your answer in the comments, A or B. Also, I want to know, what part of this story resonated with you the most? Was there a moment that reflected something you faced in your own life? Share it in the comments. Your insight might be the exact thing someone else needs to read today. And finally, if this journey spoke to you, if it made you pause, reflect, or breathe a little deeper, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support isn't just a number, it's fuel. It gives us the energy to keep creating more stories like this. Stories that remind us we're not alone. Stories that help us train not just our minds, but our lives. See you in the next one. Stay calm, stay strong, and never forget, you are in control of the one thing that matters most, you.